You wake up one morning to find that something is seriously wrong. Your car won't start. The TV says that there's some kind of problem with the satellites. But it's when you step outside that you realize what's really going on. There's no gravity. The ground beneath your feet seems miles away. And it's not long before you realize why. You're gonna die. And although this sounds like the plot of a movie, scientists have actually said that it could happen soon. But what exactly would happen if gravity suddenly disappeared? Well, here are 5 things that would happen if gravity stopped working for 24 hours. In the first few seconds after the disappearance of gravity, you would still be standing firmly on the ground. That's because gravity doesn't disappear immediately. It takes time for its effects to be felt. This would only last for a few minutes while the planet readjusts to the new conditions. In that time, though, you should get ready to run to the nearest window and look up, because within moments, the atmosphere around you will begin drifting up into space at an incredible speed of 25,000 miles per hour. But why does this happen? Well, gravity affects more than just us humans. Everything in the atmosphere is affected by it, from the smallest atom to the largest molecule. And these particles are constantly being bombarded with gravitational energy. When gravity disappears, they lose their source of energy and momentum and begin to drift upwards at incredible speeds. These particles aren't just drifting upwards, though. They're also being pulled along with the rotation of the planet. So, as the Earth spins, so too does its atmosphere. The result is a giant vortex of gas and debris spinning off into space. If you wanted to escape this fate, you would need to move very quickly. But you might want to hold on to your chair before doing so, because all around you things are about to get very wet. That's because the Earth's oceans are also affected by gravity. Without gravity, the water can no longer be held back by the planet's surface and begins to form giant floating spheres that drift aimlessly through the skies. These spheres eventually form clouds and rain down on the Earth below. And if you don't get out of the way, you'll be crushed to death by a ton of water. To make matters worse, the water isn't the only thing falling from the sky. That's because without gravity, the Earth's tectonic plates can no longer be held together and begin to drift apart. As the plates move further and further away from each other, the planet becomes weaker and weaker until it eventually breaks apart and falls into the sun. So unless you have somewhere else to go, you're probably screwed. But let's say you were lucky enough to survive the apocalypse so far. What now? Well, you might want to take a seat and prepare for impact, because in just a few hours, the Earth will crash back into the atmosphere and kill everyone on it. But why does this happen? Well, when gravity disappears, the planet loses its shape and size. Without gravity to hold it together, the Earth literally begins to fall apart. As the planet collapses, it forms a dense ball of rock and dust that begins to fall towards the center of the Earth. At first, the ball is small, but as it gets closer and closer to the planet, friction causes it to heat up. This heat makes the ball expand and grow until it eventually engulfs the entire planet. So it's clear that if you were still alive, this would definitely kill you. But how fast would this happen? Well, according to NASA, the Earth would crash back down to the atmosphere at a speed of 200 miles per hour. At this speed, the impact would cause massive earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that would wipe out any remaining life on the planet. The air temperature would rise to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt rock and metal, and the intense pressure would cause every mountain on Earth to flatten out. If somehow you managed to survive all this, you wouldn't for long. Eventually, the Earth would collapse in on itself and form a black hole. Anything that got too close to the black hole would be pulled in and destroyed. This includes light, so nothing could escape the black hole. After the big crunch, the Earth would eventually evaporate completely, and the solar system would never be the same again. Although this might sound like a disaster movie, scientists are actually worried that something similar could happen in real life. According to NASA, the Earth's gravity is weakening by around 1% every year. Although this might not seem like much, over time it will have serious consequences for our planet. Eventually, the Earth will lose enough gravity to stop holding onto its atmosphere, and the planet will become uninhabitable. So we might not have much time left. But even if we do manage to survive for another billion years, we still won't get a break because it won't be long before the sun explodes and kills us all anyway. But what if this scenario played out a little differently? What if gravity didn't disappear completely? What if it just decreased by 90%? After all, scientists have noticed that the Earth's gravity is weakening, so it's not impossible that one day it will be much weaker than it is today. If this happened, we would notice almost immediately. That's because our bodies are used to the current level of gravity. When it decreases by 90, we would feel very strange. That's because our muscles and bones would begin to weaken almost immediately. Within a few days, we would be unable to walk or carry out everyday tasks. But our problems would be just beginning because without the strength of gravity, the Earth would begin to spin faster and faster. As the planet spun, it would flatten at the poles and bulge out at the equator. Eventually, the Earth would be so wobbly that it wouldn't even look like a planet anymore. But if this happened, what could we do about it? Well, according to scientists, we could try and fix the problem by dumping a bunch of rocks into the ocean. By adding mass to the planet, we could increase the level of gravity and bring the Earth back to its normal shape. However, this wouldn't be easy. We would need to add around 4 trillion tons of rock to the planet to make any difference. If we did manage to do this, though, we could go on living our lives as normal. But there is one big question. If we decrease gravity by 90, what happens when it goes back up to 100? After all, the Earth has been getting weaker for billions of years, and it's unlikely that it'll suddenly get stronger. According to scientists, when gravity returned to normal, it would cause a massive shock wave that would destroy everything on the planet. That's because our bodies would be used to the lower gravity and would not be able to handle the sudden increase. Our muscles and bones would snap, and we would be in constant pain. It wouldn't just be us humans that would be affected either. The Earth itself would be in danger. As gravity increased, the planet would begin to shake and rumble. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions would occur all over the world, killing millions of people. The sea levels would rise and fall rapidly, causing massive waves that would inundate coastal cities. As you can imagine, this would be absolute chaos. And if we were unlucky, it could end all life on Earth. However, there is one thing that could make this even worse. What if gravity didn't just return to normal? What if it went over 100? If this happened, the Earth would become super heavy, and everything on it would be crushed to death. Buildings would collapse, bridges would crumble, and mountains would flatten out. Even atoms would be crushed together and form new elements. Although this might sound like a nightmare, it's not actually that bad. That's because once the dust had settled, the Earth would be completely empty. There would be no people, animals, or plants left on the planet. It would literally be a world without life. However, this wouldn't last for long, because it wouldn't be long before the sun exploded and killed everyone anyway. Now you need to watch. What if the sun suddenly disappeared? Or have a look at, what if the moon suddenly exploded?